The NFL world didn't just react to what happened in Chicago, it convulsed. What unfolded after the Bears dismantled the Browns was bigger than a 31-3 loss and louder than any box score breakdown. This wasn't a bad game. This wasn't a rough outing. This was a public unraveling that exposed fault lines running through Cleveland's entire organization, and the spark that set everything on fire came not from a coach or an analyst, but from the most respected player in the Browns locker room. When Myles Garrett stepped in front of the microphones, he wasn't interested in damage control or polite deflection. He was fed up. And what he said cut straight through the noise that's been swallowing rookie quarterback Shador Sanders since the day he took his first NFL snap. On the field, the story looked simple to anyone skimming headlines. Caleb Williams looked poised, controlled, and efficient. The Bears executed. The Browns collapsed. Sanders was battered from the opening drive, hit early, hit often, and left with a stat line that media members rushed to weaponize. Interceptions became proof of incompetence. Incompletions became evidence of panic. The context disappeared instantly. The offensive line getting overwhelmed? Ignored. The receivers failing to separate? Barely mentioned. The fact that Sanders was throwing in brutal Chicago winter conditions while running for his life? Conveniently forgotten. Instead, the narrative machine went to work, and by the time the post-game shows rolled around, the verdict was already written. He wasn't ready. He wasn't the guy. The Browns might have blown it. That's where Garrett drew the line. What made his response resonate wasn't volume or theatrics. It was precision. He didn't speak in vague platitudes about supporting teammates. He attacked the idea that Sanders was the problem at all. He dismantled the claim that this was about mental processing or toughness by pointing back to the film, back to the hits, back to the reality of playing quarterback behind one of the most overmatched lines in football. Garrett wasn't asking for sympathy. He was demanding honesty. And in doing so, he exposed something uncomfortable about how young quarterbacks are evaluated in today's NFL media ecosystem. Because this wasn't just about one bad game. This was about how fast the industry decides who gets patience and who doesn't. Caleb Williams struggled early this season. That's not a secret. He looked overwhelmed at times, forced throws, took sacks, and absorbed criticism. But the tone was completely different. His struggles were framed as learning curves, growth moments, necessary pain on the road to stardom. Analysts talked about protection, play design, and roster construction. They talked about time. They talked about trust. When Sanders struggles in a worse situation with less help and more chaos, suddenly it's about character and ceiling. Suddenly it's about whether he belongs. Garrett made it clear that distinction wasn't accidental. He talked about lies being spread, not opinions. Claims that Sanders was holding the ball too long when the tape shows defenders in his lap almost instantly. Assertions that he missed open receivers when the reality is that there was no pocket to step into and no clean window to throw from. Interceptions framed as poor decision-making without acknowledging that contact at release and desperation situations skew everything. These weren't nuanced debates. These were narratives built for speed and clicks, not accuracy. And then there's the environment itself. Soldier Field in winter isn't just another stadium. It's a different sport. Wind alters trajectory. Cold stiffens grip. Timing evaporates. The Bears are built for it. They live in it. Sanders was dropped into it while already fighting uphill. That context matters. It always has. The refusal to include it isn't oversight. It's convenience. What Garrett also highlighted, whether intentionally or not, is the psychological weight being dropped on a rookie quarterback before he's had a chance to breathe. Sanders isn't just learning coverages and protections. He's learning how to survive an organization in flux. Coaching changes. Unclear commitment. A fan base frustrated beyond patience. A media cycle waiting to declare a failure. Quarterback is already the most mentally demanding position in sports. Playing it while constantly being told you might not belong is a different level of pressure. Confidence erodes. Instincts hesitate. Fear replaces flow. That doesn't show up in a stat sheet, but it shows up on Sundays. And yet, through all of this, Sanders hasn't lashed out. He hasn't blamed teammates. He hasn't deflected responsibility. He shows up, takes the hits, answers the questions, and goes back to work. That's not weakness. That's resilience. Garrett saw that firsthand. And he wasn't about to let it be rewritten by people who only see the highlights and the headlines. This moment matters because it challenges the system that creates stars and buries others before their careers even begin. It forces a conversation about how much responsibility media has to be accurate, not just loud. About whether context should be optional. About whether development is a privilege or a standard. When veterans like Garrett speak up, it sends a signal beyond one locker room. It tells young players that they're not alone. It tells fans to question what they're being sold. And it tells the media that not everyone is willing to play along. The Browns are still a mess. That hasn't changed. The offensive line issues are real. The organizational instability is real. Sanders' struggles are real too. But they're not isolated. They're not definitive. And they sure as hell aren't the full story. Writing him off now says more about the evaluator than the player. This wasn't just a post-game rant. It was a line drawn. And whether the media adjusts or doubles down will say a lot about where the league is headed and how it treats the next generation of quarterbacks. Now it's your turn. Do you think Myles Garrett was right to go nuclear and call out the media for how they're covering Shador Sanders? Do you believe this is a case of unfair narratives crushing a rookie in a broken situation? Or do you think criticism is just part of the job at this level? How much patience should young quarterbacks get before the league turns on them? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments, because this conversation isn't going away.